Hi everyone, this is JD with Wildwood Digital Media. Today I want to go over some very basic elements of Adobe After Effects. The first thing I want to cover is understanding keyframes. Because if you understand keyframes, then you'll begin to understand a lot of other After Effects processes and effects and options, etc. So what we're going to do is we're going to open After Effects. We're going to go to New Composition. This really doesn't matter what we're about to set it at. I have it set as HDTV 1080. The duration, I have it 8 seconds. That is 0800. It frequently comes in at 10 seconds, so yours might say 1000. And the background color also doesn't matter because that's not your real background color. So go ahead and just hit OK. Again, none of this really matters right now. You can, once you get into projects and you understand After Effects more, you can set it to whatever your project needs to be. Okay, now you're going to see, I'm going to go over here by the left-hand corner, by the way, and then go to Fit so I can see my whole canvas here. Now, when we're in here, if I hit this little guy over here that looks like a checkerboard, I can remove that background color because that background color is not real. It's just there to help me visualize things. I like to keep it off, that way I actually know what I'm seeing. And just to get started, we'll give ourselves a real background by clicking on the rectangle tool one time. And over here on the fill, I'm going to give it some color. We'll make it a lighter color. We'll make it a lighter blue. And I'm going to click OK. Now, of course, nothing happened. By the way, if you see up here, mine is set to a gradient. If I click Alt on my keyboard and I click on that, I can sort through various options. I just want a straight fill. I accidentally had gradient on, which is why it was shifting from one color to the other. Now I have it just on straight fill, 0 pixels on my stroke. And now the magic, one little shortcut, is double click on your rectangle tool. And you will automatically create a rectangle the same size as your canvas. And you have a shape layer down here at the bottom. You have your rectangle. Okay. Now, here's where we're going to get into understanding After Effects and keyframes. So let's go ahead and do another shape. We've clicked off of the shape layer, by the way. That's important because otherwise we'll add it to it. So we just click anywhere off of there. Selected, unselected. So make sure it's unselected. We're going to toggle through our shapes by holding Alt, clicking on the rectangle. We'll go to a ellipse. I'm going to change my color to something that stands out. We'll go with that pinkish color. We'll put that right there. And I just clicked and dragged, and now I have a second shape layer. And to get things a little bit neater for us, what we're going to do is we're going to hit Enter, and we're going to rename our shape layer 1 as background. And then we'll hit on shape layer 2. We will go to circle. Okay, now we have those two things. And you're saying to yourself, what does this have to do with keyframes? Okay, what we're going to do now is we're going to hit the tilde, which is beside the number 1, and we're going to select this area down here. You can see the blue line around this. This is our timeline with our keyframes. Now we can expand everything a little bit. And what we're going to do, and there are shortcuts for expanding too. I always forget them. I think it's double E, but I could be wrong. I am wrong. Again, some of these shortcuts you'll remember really well, and some of them you'll forget. I end up always clicking on the caret to end up expanding things. Okay, now looking up here, we see 0, 10F, 20F, 1, 2. Over here is 8. So we have these as seconds. Now we're doing 30 frames per second. So 10F means 10 frames. And it corresponds to the fact that at 1 minute, we will have accomplished 30 frames of video. So I can select here and drag these to do a better visualization. I'm grabbing the top one so I can zoom in a little bit. Oh, what do we see now? we're beginning to see as I drag this top one, see, we're zooming in on our timeline. So now all of a sudden we went from 1 minute being a very small piece on our timeline to a much larger piece. So we're going to drag that until, not quite there, keep going, there we go. Now what has happened is I dragged the top slider. We're now zoomed in on our timeline and we see 0 frames, 1 frame, 2 frame, 3 frames. And if you have a nice mechanical keyboard, you can use your arrow keys and slide through those usually if we have it selected. Well, depending upon which particular piece. And we'll go here to 4, 5, 6, etc. Okay, now the important part. Zoom in here, and 1 frame, 2 frames, 6 frames. Now for me, that is a little too close. I want to end up seeing, I want something to happen over 2 seconds. So we'll drag this to 2, and then we'll go open up our circle. And you see my ellipse here, which is my circle. And I can expand these. The path, I don't need to worry about that. Stroke, don't need to worry about that. Fill, don't need to worry about that. Transform. And in transform here, we have a whole bunch of options. We have anchor point, position, scale, skew, skew axis, rotation, opacity. Now, what if I click this little clock or stopwatch icon, and you'll begin to see keyframes. So what I can do is I can set a keyframe at that particular point in time, and that's at 0 frames. And then if I go to over here to 1 minute, sorry, 1 minute, 1 second. Sorry if I said minute earlier. 1 second, and I go to 1 second, and I can add another keyframe by clicking this little guy right here, add or remove keyframes. So now I have 2 keyframes, one set at 0, one set at 1 second. And between those 2 spots, 2 points, point 1, point 2, or keyframe 1, keyframe 2, between those 2 points, there are 30 frames. That's basically 30 individual captures of what you're doing. So if we're moving something, we move it from point A to B, or keyframe 1 to keyframe 2, After Effects is going to create the movement across those keyframes for us. So I have it here, and now you notice here it's set at 100, and we go here, it's set at 100. Nothing has changed actually. So what we can do is we can make it, now we're at 50, and we'll drag. Now watch what happens. It's automatically going to change for us. After Effects is doing the math for us, and it knows that we're starting at 50 and we're going to 100. Now the cool thing about After Effects is you can use this little guy and you can do it manually, but if you just go drag over here to 2 seconds and we type 0, it will add a keyframe for us, and you'll see it added a keyframe right there, which is exactly what we want. Now, what does this look like? We can hit tilde and go back. Now watch. We're starting at 50%. We're going to go to 100%. Then we're going back to 0. So that's how After Effects works. That's how keyframes work. You can do something super simple like we just did, or you can do something super complicated as well. Now you'll notice here it's going off the line because I have not dragged this bottom one as well. And that'll, we should be able to hit space bar. Make it a little easier as well. So if we drag both of these to around the same spot, and then you hit space bar. Space bar plays for you, by the way. So if I started playing and you weren't sure how I did that, it's because I hit space bar. And then I dragged this bottom one in. because nothing is happening, there are no additional keyframes after 2 seconds. We don't need to have this the whole way out here. Otherwise, it's just playing nothing. And then we can drag this top one here in. Okay, so that was nothing. So what could we do here? Let's make it a little bit more complicated. Now with keyframes, we have added 1, 2, 3 keyframes. I can grab my pointer and I can select this keyframe and delete it. I can select this keyframe and move it down to 2 minutes. 2 seconds. There you go. Now, let's make it do something more interesting. Let's do position. We'll click on our, and by the way, I like to, whenever you click your little stopwatch icon here, make sure you're at where you want this to start. So I went to 0. I dragged my timeline indicator to 0, and I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to hit position, and now I'm have a keyframe here. Now nothing will happen because I only have 1 keyframe and it's fixed at -164 and -23. And we're going to go ahead and we're going to drag our timeline indicator out to, or playhead, our playhead out to 2 seconds. Now watch this. I can pick either the X or the Y and I can drag this number. Let's go down and then let's go to the right, just clicking and dragging, and what do you know? It sensed, hey, there's a new mark here. We clicked on 2 seconds, and we changed these numbers, and it added a keyframe for us. So now it says, if we click over here, starting point, ending point, and then in between all of this, and that's 1 second, that's 2 seconds, so that's 60 frames. After Effects is going to go ahead and create the animation for us in all those frames, and it'll do it. We can drag through, or I can hit spacebar, and I can hit play. And you begin to see the opacity is changing, so the color changes because of how that pink works with the background, and the position is changing as well. So that's a very basic element of After Effects, which is understanding keyframes, how to change them, what they do. We're not going to bother too much with speed of keyframes, which you can change as well. I'll teach that in a later video. This video is just about understanding what a keyframe is and how to change it. And then so some other options you have over here is if you want to navigate your keyframes and not bother with moving your playhead up here, you can just use these little arrows and they'll take you from one keyframe to the next keyframe. Because in many projects you'll end up having a lot of keyframes, and so this will simplify things a bit for you. That's all I have for today. Again, this is understanding keyframes in Adobe After Effects, the basics for beginners. And remember some shortcuts for you to make your timeline and all the elements in it very big. You can hit tilde beside the number 1, and then visually for your keyframes you can remember this little diamond icon over here. It'll be beside after you've clicked on the stopwatch. So thanks for joining us, and if you have any questions, go ahead and click down below, or anything you want me to cover. I've done some After Effects videos before, and some people have reached out and really liked some of it, and they want a particular topics covered. So please go ahead and ask me if you have any questions. Thanks.